Hey, I'm Georgia, and this is not clickbait. I have indeed quit my job in consulting. And today we're going to talk all about why I quit that job, what my career has looked like so far, and what I'm doing next. Because this is probably one of the most asked comments or questions I get from folks. Asking things like, do I have tips on how to enter strategic design and consulting? How have I found working in strategic design? And what has it been like working as a designer in a consulting environment? And all of these are such great questions. I just haven't got around to answering them. So I'm really excited to finally be sitting down, and you can bet that in today's video, I will be going into a lot of information about all of those topics. And anything I don't cover today, I'll make sure to cover in the future. So don't forget to hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out, and because it helps me and this channel a lot. So thank you so much. This video will be structured in 3 parts. Lucky number 3, we love 3s in consulting. The first part is to all the jobs I've loved before, and we're gonna get into all of the detail of everywhere I've worked before and what I've learned from each of those roles. And then in part 2, to all the jobs I've loved before, P.S. I don't still love you. We'll get into the detail of why I quit consulting and will probably never go back. And then the third section is to all the jobs, always and forever, having to work because capitalism. And we'll share kind of where I'm going next, what I'm doing next. Because yeah, she's still got to work to pay the bills. So let's get into part 1. To all the jobs I've loved before. So if you've been watching since the start when I was making strategic design content, then shout out to you. Thanks for being here. If you're new, I'm Georgia. I'm a strategist and ex-BCG consultant. I didn't actually start my strategy career through, I guess, more traditional avenues like business degrees or anything like that. I actually relate more closely to design. So in 2014, I started studying a Bachelor's of Design in Visual Communications at the University of Technology, Sydney. Because in case you didn't know, I'm from Australia. I always knew I would end up studying or working in a creative field, naturally drawn to building or making things. But in the second year of my program, you had to do an internship, and I quickly learnt that I didn't actually want to be a visual, which is a great lesson to learn in the second year of your 4-year degree. But that said, it wasn't a total waste of a degree. A big turning point for me during my studies was that I got accepted into 2 programs. One was with the Google Creative Labs, and the second was a global program studying in Indonesia. And both of those classes taught me so much about design thinking, as it was labeled at the time, and also design research. But ultimately, like how I think about it, is that it taught me that design could be applied to solve business problems, and that really hooked me in. I was really excited by that. And you never really know which class or program is going to end up defining the next decade of your career, but turns out those 2 were mine. So with those learnings, I graduated into a strategic innovation consultancy. It was called Second Road, and it had just been acquired by Accenture. So I ended up finding myself working at a Big 4 consultancy. And I really liked this job. There was a really beautiful studio we worked in, which had floor-to-ceiling whiteboards you could write your big ideas on, and there were books all around you, which pre-COVID times, the studio was pretty important because you spent 5 days a week there. And in addition to that, I learned so much about business as well as strategy, and particularly applying kind of design thinking, which I had learned at university, to business problems, which I was learning about at Accenture. And I think the biggest lesson I learned at this job was all about the power of rhetoric. So unlike logic, which is Aristotle's other school of thought, where kind of 1 + 1 = 2, there's a logic to it, rhetoric is all about the power of persuasion and using your words to prove to people why your idea is right, which ultimately is what strategy is. Essentially, with strategy, you can have thousands of potential correct answers, correct strategies, but it's all about how you define your argument, how you build your argument, and how compelling you make your argument when it comes to which strategy is the one that is the most correct to move forward with. So I learned a lot about that at that first job, and I really appreciated all of those lessons. However, I wasn't making or doing as much as I wanted to be. So that leads me to where I went to next, which was RGA. So after listening to a Design Matters episode with Mike Rigby, I learned all about RGA and how they are consultants who make. And essentially, my thinking process was, I'm a consultant, I want to make, I should work at RGA because they are consultants who make. And in addition to that, obviously RGA has a really strong reputation in the creative industries as well. So looking back with hindsight, I really can't believe the coincidence and how everything fell into place so neatly. But luckily it did, because I ended up being at RGA and I really, really loved that job. It truly lived up to being consultants who make. I got to build a bunch of different things, from physical products to digital products to brands to campaigns and even businesses, building them from scratch. So it was really rewarding. But yeah, there was a lot I learned there, and I think the key takeaways was how a creative leadership team, if they're really strong, really empowered and want innovative work to happen, then they will lead the direction for the rest of the team to create that work. They will create the parameters. So it really did kind of set the blueprint for what I always kind of look for in new roles, in terms of it's not necessarily about where you work, the name does matter, but it's also about who you're working for. So what or how strong is that creative leadership team, and are they really going to champion you for creative work and encourage you to push the boundaries on your work? But ultimately, then 2022 came along and Australia reopened its borders. So all of a sudden I could move to London, and at that point I had wanted to move to London for so long. It had already been delayed long enough. I also wanted to kind of stretch my business knowledge again. The same way I had learned a lot at Accenture, I was ready to learn more business things. And then also I had really started to carve out a niche for myself in strategic design, and I wanted to find a team that really specialized in that. And then BCG came up on my radar. I ended up interviewing 7 times. We had those interviews in UK time as well, so I was interviewing at like 11 p.m. my time. And after all of those interviews, I landed a job at BCGX. And so that business knowledge I was looking for more of, well, BCG definitely delivered. They delivered to the next level. It was very intense, but I learned so much about how businesses are structured, how businesses run, how business decisions are made. I personally worked on projects that revolved around building digital experiences in industries such as energy, finance, healthcare, and insurance. And so you can see I obviously covered a lot of different industries. BCG was also a really social company. There were thousands of people to meet. The offices were beautiful and it was all very shiny. But as you know, and as the title of this video suggests, I did quit. So we'll get into, I guess, the reasons why I did that now in part 2. To all the jobs I've loved before, P.S. I don't still love you. There are actually quite a few reasons why I decided to quit consulting. And it wasn't that it was an easy decision, it was just that it was like the right decision for me. And let's pause here right now to just talk about the fact that these are my experiences. So these are not reflective of the colleagues or the clients or the company I worked for. So I'm just sharing my personal experience of why I quit consulting, and you can obviously take what you need from this and leave the rest. So the first reason I left consulting was because I didn't get to make or build or do as much as I wanted. Consultants, generally speaking, tend to advise on projects. If I compare it to other places I had worked, we would be delivering a creative thing, a built product or a new experience weekly, versus in a whole year at BCG, I only got to deliver one creative product. And obviously I cannot talk to any of the projects I worked on, but that cadence was not enough for me. And I felt the consequences of that in other areas of my life. For example, I stopped making YouTube videos. I went to less exhibitions and galleries. I felt less of a desire to engage with the creative world because I felt further and further from it. The second reason was in line with creativity as well. The culture around design just wasn't where I would want it to be, with opportunities to work with other creatives and have kind of design sitting at the heart of the projects. And once again, this could work really well for a lot of people, but I've been in the design world for a decade now, and I just really, truly, deeply believe that design can solve so many problems, and I really appreciate companies where design is at the heart of the business. The third reason I probably won't be returning to consulting is the simple fact that the work-life balance is very difficult to maintain, especially if you're on a project that requires travel. And all of this took a huge toll on my mental and physical health. I didn't really feel like I could make myself a routine to stick to, which I really struggled with because I crave routine, I crave structure. Okay, and finally, the fourth reason is down to something that I didn't expect going into the job, and that was the size of the organization and how the business is structured. So what I mean by that is that MBBs tend to operate around a hierarchical organizational structure where you have all of these levels, like most businesses do, but unlike other places I've worked, those levels, they felt very adhered to, and they hold a lot of weight and power in the room. And obviously that is great for anyone who that works really well for. But once again, when it came to me, I know how I work. And when I compare it to other places I've worked, I felt a lot less autonomy. When I know that it's my opinion on the table and it's my project that I have to deliver, I am much more intrinsically motivated to work and get excited about work. So those are just a few of the reasons I decided to quit consulting, and I hope that this is helpful to those considering a job in consulting, and especially for those considering going into consulting as a designer, because I'm certainly not at all advocating for going against consulting. I still have a lot of friends who work at that company and I genuinely love and respect. It was just that when it came to my needs and my expectations at a job, it wasn't serving me. It wasn't going to be somewhere that I felt I could thrive in. And speaking of feeling like I couldn't thrive in that space, I did a lot of work with my therapist, and we identified what I needed in a role so that my job was more closely aligned with my values. Some examples of what I was looking for were equal representation of genders across levels, creatively driven work. What I mean by that is that the design and the making was at the heart of what you deliver, and also boundary pushing work, like having clients that really want to deliver awesome stuff. So let's see if I happened to meet any of those expectations in part 3. To all the jobs, always and forever, having to work because capitalism. Well, I'm happy to say that I did land a new job that has a lot of those values aligned with the business. I'm still working as a strategist / strategic designer. I work at a small design studio in Shoreditch. I work with 3D, environment, product, visual designers every day to build immersive retail experiences. There are really cool, really innovative clients, and there's also an equitable representation of genders across all levels. Of course, no job is perfect, but when it comes to my values right now and what I consider important in my career, it does tick a lot of those boxes. In case it wasn't apparent, I have particularly felt more creative since changing jobs, because after changing jobs, I actually started posting YouTube videos again. So knowing that my job inspires and fuels me to want to be more creative and drives me to want to go out to galleries and exhibitions and go to talks with my colleagues, these are all really positive signs that I'm in a really good position and that things are looking good for now. So to wrap this TED Talk up, I just want to say that if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's to subscribe to my channel. No, but you can do that too. No, it's figuring out what you value and trying your best to get that aligned to your job as closely as possible. And I know I come from this in like a really privileged position as I say that, because I have been able to do that. But even if it's just one thing where your values align with the job, I think it's going to make going to work a lot more manageable and make a huge difference in how you feel in your day-to-day. So that's all from me. If you've watched this far, please leave a comment about any types of videos you might like to hear from me in the future, particularly about strategy and design. I know that I kind of put those videos on the back burner for a while, but now that I'm feeling more creatively invigorated, I'm excited to get back into them. So yeah, that's it from me. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day or evening wherever you are, and see you next time. Bye. The first part is To All the Boys. Nope, that's the movie. From my experience and through the lens of my experience. I just said that. 2 degrees. Whoa, not 2 more degrees. 2 programs. Helpful to those considering a consulting. Whoa. Sun just got so bright. Let's do this. Let's hit record. So 14 years ago, whoa, no,